This man is really unfortunate. When Howard came to see Jimmy, everything was fine, but who could have imagined he wouldn't be able to return? This situation directly scared Jimmy and Kim out of their wits. The ruthless killer Lalo made them quiet down because he still had a task for Jimmy and Kim to complete. Lalo threw a car key to Jimmy and then gave him Gus's address. In the car, there was a camera and a revolver. Lalo gave Jimmy 1 hour to complete the mission of assassinating Gus and take a photo as proof. Otherwise, his wife Kim would be killed. Jimmy suggested that Kim go because she, as a woman, would make others less suspicious. This was also Jimmy's way of protecting Kim because being with Lalo was even more dangerous. But Kim doesn't want to put Jimmy in danger either, so they push each other and almost argue. Hearing this, Lalo became a bit impatient. He agreed to Jimmy's suggestion to let Kim go. Since Lalo agreed, Kim had no reason not to go. However, just as Kim was about to leave, Lalo called her back.
You're gonna need your shoes, right?
It seemed that Kim was really scared senseless, as she even forgot to wear her shoes when going out. Kim reluctantly looked back at Jimmy because this parting might be a life and death separation.
There you go. Okay, so 1 hour starting now. Clock's ticking, Mrs. Goodman.
After Kim left, Lalo tied Jimmy up and told him about his family being attacked. The traitor who betrayed him was Nacho, and it was Jimmy who Nacho introduced to Lalo. Upon hearing this, Jimmy hastily denied his relationship with Nacho, but Lalo didn't care what he said because he knew that Jimmy's best skill was making things up. Lalo turned the TV volume up to its maximum to cover Jimmy's cries for help inside the house. Then he took Jimmy's car keys and started his action. Jimmy struggled desperately in the chair trying to break free from the bindings, but he accidentally fell to the ground along with the chair. From this angle, Jimmy was looking directly into the eyes of Howard, who had just been killed. Meanwhile, Kim is on her way to Gus's house, waiting at a red light when she encounters the police. Although Kim rolled down the window, she didn't dare to report the situation. Soon, Kim arrived at Gus's door according to the address given by Lalo. She took out the camera and gun from the glove compartment and then walked cautiously towards Gus's door. Anyone who came to Gus's door would be monitored, and Kim was no exception. At the door, Kim gently rang the doorbell. Seeing a shadow flash through the peephole, she reluctantly took out the gun. This scene was reminiscent of Jesse's assassination of Gail. Unfortunately, this was Gus's territory. Before Kim could react, Mike pushed her directly into the house. All of this was within Gus's surveillance view. Seeing the assassination attempt fail, Kim wanted to go back and save Jimmy but was held back by Mike. Kim confessed that she was sent by Lalo to assassinate the owner of the house. Originally, Lalo wanted to send Jimmy, but was persuaded to change his mind. Hearing this, Mike immediately led a team to rescue Jimmy. Of course, he had to report the next actions to Gus before leaving. Meanwhile, Lalo took the opportunity to sneak into Gus's laundry facility. Although the surveillance had captured Lalo's figure, he had already entered a blind spot before the security personnel could be in place. To avoid exposure, Lalo planned to crawl in through the ventilation fan. Lalo's feint strategy was indeed quite clever, but his actions still didn't escape Gus's sharp eyes. Gus called his men and had Kim answer the phone.
Why did Lalo send you?
Who is this? He didn't want to send me, not at first. He wanted to send my husband. But my husband talked him out of it because he wanted to get me out of there.
He talked Lalo out of it.
That's right.
Hearing this, Gus was more convinced that Lalo's goal was to find evidence in the laundry facility. Sending someone to assassinate him was just a cover for Lalo's actions. So, Gus took 2 of his men to the laundry facility. Upon arrival, his men reported no activity there, but Gus was not convinced. Gus inspected the area carefully. Suddenly, he saw a bent blade on the ventilation fan and realized that Lalo had already sneaked into the laundry facility. Then there were several gunshots, and all of Gus's men fell to the ground. Lalo finally shows up. Meanwhile, Mike had also arrived at Jimmy's apartment. Since the curtains were all drawn, the snipers couldn't see inside, so Mike had to lead his team directly in. At this time, Jimmy was still lying on the ground. After entering, Mike untied the cloth gag from Jimmy's mouth and learned that Lalo had left the apartment right after Kim. Realizing they had fallen for Lalo's trick, Mike immediately called Gus. By this time, Gus was already being controlled by Lalo, and his phone had been thrown aside. Lalo took out a video camera and began mocking Gus. then ordered Gus to take him to see his underground laboratory. Seeing Gus's reluctance, Lalo shot him directly in the chest. It seemed the quality of the bulletproof vest was quite good. Gus pretended to reluctantly open the secret door. Feeling triumphant, Lalo became somewhat arrogant. To vent his anger, he kicked Gus down the stairs. Worried about running out of bullets, Lalo deliberately changed to a new magazine. With this evidence, Lalo could condemn Gus to death. He mocked Gus for digging his own grave. Gus stated that Lalo couldn't kill him yet because he had something to say to Don. Hearing this, Lalo was curious to see what tricks Gus had up his sleeve. He gave Gus 1 minute. Little did Lalo know, this was Gus's stalling tactic. Remember the scene from the last episode where Gus prepared the site? When Gus expressed his dissatisfaction with the cartel, the camera focused on a wiring point and the gun he had hidden under the excavator's tracks. What followed was Gus's moment of turning the tables.
Hector? I kept him alive. Before he dies, he will know I buried every one of you.
You done?
No, not yet.
The words Gus had just spoken also echoed the storyline in Breaking Bad. He truly took down the entire criminal organization on his own. Finally, Gus demonstrated his success in avenging himself in front of Hector. Gus turned on the temporary lighting to see Lalo already lying in a pool of blood. Now that Gus had seen Lalo die with his own eyes, the stone hanging in his heart finally fell. Although Gus was wearing a bulletproof vest, he was still shot. Fortunately, it didn't hit any vital areas. Then he called an employee to request a week-long vacation. Mike was angry about Gus's actions. He blamed Gus for making decisions on his own without informing him. If anything went wrong, he couldn't bear the responsibility. Then Mike went to Jimmy's apartment to deal with Howard's body. Jimmy was still worried that Lalo would come after them again. Mike assured him that this time it wouldn't happen, since Mike had made the same promise last time. Jimmy no longer believed him. Mike explained to Jimmy and Kim what they needed to do next. Just like in Breaking Bad, after Jane died, Mike instructed Jesse on what to do. Mike would come up with a foolproof story to deal with the police.
Someone calls you, someone at the courthouse mentions it. The moment that happens, you call the cops. His car was here for hours last night. Good chance somebody noticed it. That means you are the last people to see him alive. Cops are going to want to hear from you. You tell the cops you saw him. He came here. Seemed like maybe he was chemically altered. Didn't make a lick of sense. Then he left, that's all you know. You keep telling the lie that you've been telling.
After explaining everything, Mike had one more important task to do, which was to dispose of Lalo and Howard's bodies. Ironically, Howard would be buried underground with the man who killed him. With the burial of Howard and Lalo, the series gradually draws to a close. Following Mike's instructions, Jimmy and Kim acted as if nothing had happened and went to work the next day as usual. Mike led his men to Jimmy's apartment to clean up the crime scene. When Jimmy and Kim returned home, although the scene had been thoroughly cleaned, the shadow of Howard's tragic death lingered in their hearts forever. Jimmy understood Kim's feelings at that moment, so he picked up his luggage and prepared to stay at a hotel temporarily. Remember Jimmy's ordeal at the border last time? Barely escaping death, Jimmy asked Mike how to forget everything, and Mike had given him this advice. Smart Jimmy learned fast. He directly transposed Mike's words to persuade Kim.
One day we'll wake up and brush our teeth and we'll go to work. And at some point we'll suddenly realize that we haven't thought about it at all. None of it.
In this scene, the painting above the bed looked familiar. Fans of Breaking Bad would recognize it as it appeared twice in that show, both times symbolizing Walter drifting apart from his family. The same painting appearing here also hinted at Jimmy and Kim's impending separation. Meanwhile, because Lalo had called Hector before his final action to say he was going after Gus for revenge, Hector knew his plan. Unfortunately, Lalo didn't get his revenge and instead lost his life. Due to Lalo's disappearance, Hector accused Gus in front of Don. However, without any evidence to accuse Don's cash cow and with Gus's flawless setup, Hector failed in his attempt. Don directly ordered Hector to leave. In Don's eyes, There were no permanent friends, only permanent interests, since there was no one to manage the Salamanca territory in the north. Don put Gus in charge of it, but Don wasn't naive. He saw the hatred in Gus's eyes and reminded Gus not to forget who the boss was as he left. Gus continued to endure, never forgetting the scene of Max's tragic death by the pool. Taking down the Salamanca family was a significant step forward in Gus's path of revenge. With the most dangerous Lalo now dead, Gus felt unprecedented relief. He opened all the windows and arranged for Mike to continue finding a construction crew. Gus could finally build his underground commercial empire with peace of mind. Gus also makes his official exit in this episode, allowing the storyline to seamlessly connect with Breaking Bad. Similarly, Mike also makes his final exit in this episode. Before the end, he does one last thing. He tells Nacho's father about Nacho. They both lost their sons, and Mike understands Manuel's feelings, but he wanted Manuel to know that Nacho wasn't an irredeemable criminal.
Your son made some mistakes. He fell in with bad people. But he was never like them. Not really. He had a good heart. One more thing. You won't have to worry about the Salamancas. Their day is coming. There'll be justice.
What you talk of is revenge. It never ends. Ustedes son el cartel y su justicia. Todos son iguales.
As an outsider, Manuel can see more clearly the true nature of these people. On the other side, Jimmy and Kim arrive at the HHM law firm for Howard's memorial. The trash can that Jimmy once kicked has already been replaced. Since Jimmy and Kim have to keep up the lie, they must continue acting in front of everyone, but this performance is a real test of psychological endurance. Jimmy and Kim first greet Rick. From Rick, they learn that HHM is going to downsize because all three key figures of HHM are gone, marking the end of the HHM era. Since they are already here, they must pretend to be calm and console Howard's wife, Cheryl, because Howard had told his wife earlier that Jimmy was messing with him. Howard asked her not to believe the rumors. Additionally, since Jimmy and Kim were the last to see Howard alive, Cheryl wanted Jimmy to repeat the statement he gave to the police. Jimmy had no reason to refuse the request, so he repeated the story Mike had fabricated, but he left out any mention of Howard seemingly using illegal substances. Cheryl wants to know why Jimmy said that Howard was using illegal substances. She believed her husband would never touch that stuff and said there must be more to the case. Seeing that Jimmy had no reason to refute Cheryl, Kim, after an intense internal struggle, decided to lie one last time to support Jimmy.
Please, just spit it out.
It was about 1.5 years ago. I was still an associate here, working late on a brief. And I saw a light on in Howard's office. I assumed the cleaning crew left it on by mistake.
And?
And Howard was there at his desk, head down. And he was snorting something. I never told anyone. But now I wish I had.
Hearing this, Cheryl couldn't believe Howard would do that. She asked Howard's old friend Clifford if he had seen anything. Clifford knew there were suspicions of Howard using illegal substances, but he didn't realize it was a trap set by Kim and Jimmy, so he didn't give Cheryl the answer she was looking for. Cheryl broke down once again.
You saw him every day. You knew him better than anyone. Maybe I misunderstood what I saw. Please excuse me.
Afterward, Jimmy and Kim went to the garage, and Kim remained silent. Jimmy urged Kim to let the wounds of the heart heal now that everything was over. However, what Jimmy didn't know was that Kim had secretly decided she couldn't continue like this. Kim looked at Jimmy, gave him a heartfelt kiss, and then drove away. What Jimmy didn't realize was that this was Kim's goodbye kiss to him. Immediately after, Kim submitted a request to the judge to change the lawyer for her client. The judge asked for her reason, and Kim said she had applied to the Bar Association to revoke her law license. When Jimmy found out, he rushed over and pleaded with Kim not to give up her career as a lawyer. He didn't give Kim a chance to speak and said he was willing to face difficulties with her. He wanted to take Kim to a hotel to adjust their mood. However, when he went to the room to pack things, he saw that Kim had already packed her bags.
We are bad for each other.
Don't do this. Kim, please.
Jimmy, I have had the time of my life with you. But we are bad for everyone around us. Other people suffer. Because of us.
I love you.
I love you too. But so what?
No.
Hearing this, Jimmy was somewhat angry. He felt that Kim shouldn't think Howard's death was their responsibility. He blamed Howard's death on the appearance of that damned Lalo, but Kim revealed that she had known for a while that Lalo wasn't dead. She had noticed someone following her, whom she later warned after discovering them. It wasn't until Mike appeared and explained that Lalo was still alive and that those men were sent by him to protect Jimmy and Kim. Kim really realized her mistake.
Mike told you that Lalo was alive. And you didn't tell me?
Jimmy, I thought it was a 1 in a million chance that he'd come for us. I thought he would be caught if he did, and I told myself I was protecting you. You'd blame yourself. You'd fear for me. You'd want us to run and hide until you were sure I was safe. You would pull the plug on the scam and then... Because I was having too much fun.
A person's most valuable trait is the ability to recognize their mistakes clearly and make the right adjustments in time, thus preventing themselves from falling into the abyss. Even if one falls into the abyss, there is still a chance to climb out. Kim's departure also accelerated Jimmy's transformation into Saul. Without Kim's restraint, a few years later, Jimmy lived a life of decadence and debauchery. His residence was like a luxurious palace, with a different woman by his side every day. An 18-meter-long dining table was used only by him. Of course, his Cadillac was indispensable. Despite having a lot of money, he still wanted to snag a handicapped parking spot for free. At this point, Saul's law office had become the one scene in Breaking Bad. Saul started his busy day with a mug that had "World's Best Lawyer" printed on it.
Let justice be done, though the heavens fall.
Truly, blood runs thicker than water. Chuck had also said the same thing.